Everybody, happy, what is today, Wednesday? Just left the gym and actually headed up to help do a final walkthrough for another agent, actually on my listing. It's always good when you're able to help another agent out. Good karma comes back. But I got some windshield time because that's all the way in good old Oakdale. And something I want to talk about, as you see in the subject line, is, what's worse for a buyer, a bad, real estate agent, realtor, or a bad loan officer. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because I've had I've seen two absolutely terrible lenders screw some buyers out of a couple $1,000 just in the last 2 weeks alone. And I want to kind of talk about it and bring it up. But I'll also kind of talk about, the opposite side of stuff, realtors, real estate agents. I would, if I had to kind of like just ultimately pick one or the other, I do think a bad real estate agent, a bad realtor is ultimately worse off for a buyer than a loan officer. Now I say that a loan officer can absolutely screw a buyer from getting a home. They can mess up. They can send stuff to underwriting. They can just be just as shady and salesy and what we call the old bait and switch. Oh yeah, we have this really low interest rate. And then they didn't tell you about how buying points work. And that was you buying points. And that's thousands of dollars that you don't necessarily know about until 3 days before closing. They don't tell you about all these hidden fees. They don't click a button a couple days before closing in order to get you to sign something which is required for you to close, and then delays your closing, and then screws up the whole deal. But ultimately, like real estate agents, like they got to get you in the house. They got to know how to negotiate. They got to basically be able to. There's probably in any given real estate deal, there's probably 10 to 15 people at minimum that really a real estate agent kind of has to corral and get all on the same page, almost micromanage sometimes to a certain extent to make sure they're doing their job. And the hope is that everybody is going to act in good faith, that everybody is going to do their job how they're supposed to be done, and nobody's going to screw up. Now, if you have any type of a little bit of common sense, you get 10 to 15 people together, odds are in every single deal somebody's going to screw up a little bit, sometimes a lot of it, and sometimes there's multiple screw ups. And our job as a real estate agent, I've kind of transitioned to this the last 6 months, is I kind of tell everybody, especially agents on our teams, like we're not even really real estate agents are title, but we are literally just problem solvers. That is all we do. We negotiate on how to solve problems, to be able to help people, properly sell their home or properly buy the home they're looking for. We are problem solvers. That's truly what this position is. If you're somebody that likes structure and likes stuff that's easy and stuff that never screws up, being a real estate agent is not the job for you. If you're somebody who lives and thrives in chaos and change and stuff that happens last minute, and you got to be creative to throw Hail Marys in order to save deals, then real estate is probably a good job for you. I actually like it. I've said this multiple times in videos. I don't like task work. I don't like repetitive work. I don't like things that are easy and things that are on repeat. I thrive in a very project-oriented, how do we bring, these 1,000 things together, get everybody on the same page in order to make it happen. I really like that. I know I'm weird. I've learned that I'm the minority in that thought process, how my brain works, but I really do love it, and that's kind of I think been a key to my success, is that probably whenever I do my best work for clients is whenever it's a absolutely just crazy situation, whether I've seen it or not. weekly, definitely monthly, I run into stuff with the agents on our teams and just random stuff that I've never seen before. And we've done a lot of transactions, probably over 900 by now in total. And we've worked with, hundreds of lenders and tons of title companies and tons of inspectors and tons of appraisers and tons of other agents and clients of all shapes, sizes, and mindsets. So we've seen majority of stuff that can happen. But ultimately, a real estate agent, if you give a bad real estate agent, that is way worse than a loan officer. But what I do want to talk about in this video is those two situations. I think people need to be aware of it. And whenever I say the term bait and switch, it's mainly done by online companies or companies with not so great reputations. I would say majority of your local boots on the ground, especially mortgage brokers, those people are like real estate agents. Those people's business typically is going to come from a lot of referrals, their own marketing and advertising that they're paying for. They don't make money unless you close on the deal. So their reputation is key. Their reputation is important to them. That's how they grow. Same thing for me in real estate. And so they typically go above and beyond. And what I call is like the lenders who are on our preferred list that I've had relationships with since I was a nobody almost, a tadpole in real estate getting started. And they were just always there to help me and answer my calls. And I've always maintained a great relationship with them. Those people to me are the best of the best. And there's a lot of other great lenders out there as well. But I have never had a financing fall through with them. I've never had somebody come to me that got pre-approved with them that was not pre-approved. I've never had a situation come up where we didn't almost anticipate it and get ahead of it. And that's so important to me, and ultimately clients don't realize it, but it's so important to them because the opposite. All right, back. So the opposite of that were other lenders, whether if it's inexperienced, the online lenders that are notorious for this, screw ups, not having a relationship with appraisers, not knowing how things work, not knowing, hey, you shouldn't send this to an underwriter. Hey, I got an amendment, and on this amendment it talks about something that the underwriter shouldn't see. So that lender goes back and says, hey guys, I need you guys to fix this real quick. Get it out of here. We don't need to see it. Versus sending it in and killing the deal. I have seen it, and so these two situations recently. One was probably one of the biggest mistakes I have seen a lender who appeared to be really doing a decent job the entire time on a file. And it ended up costing the buyer $2,000. Now, how it worked out on the back end, if the lender compensated or gave points or took stuff off, I don't know. I hope they did. But anyways, we basically were scheduled to close the next day. And I get a call from the buyer's agent, like, Steven, you're not going to believe this. And this was a rocky file. And what I mean by rocky was hard to negotiate getting under contract, extremely hard to negotiate the inspection. And really both sides probably had an equal right, in their thought process of how it should be. But it was a very, very rocky contract the whole way. And we finally get everything done. I mean, we're cutting kind of commissions and figuring things out, and we got crazy stuff that's happening with appraisal repairs, and we get all the way through it. Supposed to close the next day. I get a call from the agent. They say, Steven, oh my gosh, the lender didn't send out I'm going to butcher the term of this, but basically the 3-day CD, which is what is required for a buyer, 3 business days to sign off on their final numbers. So it's when a buyer gets their final numbers. And the other thing I want to talk about also has to do with this. So the processor for the lender, right, was supposed to send it out. Now, can that mistake happen? Absolutely. But that is one of the most brutal mistakes a lender can make. So that caused it, hey, we can't close. This is a required thing. This is nothing there's a workaround. You can't call and go up the ladder to the owner and the manager and get this waived. This is a required thing. And because it was never sent, was never signed, so that started the day all over. So we had basically a 3-day delay on being able to close, well, really an additional 2 days. And boy, did my seller freak out and go ballistic. I understand it. I would say most contracts, 2-day delay, something like that. It is very common for delays to happen in contracts. But just because of how rocky, how rough it was, my seller was already on edge, kind of didn't feel that, the deal was hanging on by, a thread. And so this just absolutely, kind of sent them over the edge a little bit. And to the point where the buyer had to come up with, essentially for my seller to agree, had to come up with additional $2,000. And they did. They agreed to do so, and came out of pocket. So my seller got additional $2,000 for this lender script that should have never happened. So that's number one, right? Lender cost that buyer $2,000. I seen it, was a part of it. The other scenario, I got a call from one of the agents on our teams yesterday. A buyer was going with, a lender that we didn't have anything to do with, didn't know them. However, I know the name of the company and I know that how they do business, and I don't necessarily, I'm not going to say there's not good lenders at that company, but they're notorious, for doing a whole lot of stuff on Facebook, bait and switching. And like in a lot of groups, especially, where they post, oh, we can get you pre-approved, we can do all this stuff. And again, that's fine, right? That's lead generation. That's marketing and advertising. I'm not saying you can't do that, but they're notorious. And I've had a bunch of bad experiences with them. Actually, it was probably within my first 10 deals in real estate, was with this company. That tells you how long it is. This was 2019, 2019. And I remember this. I remember the company verbatim. We're under contract, all this stuff pre-approved, good to go. Well, we're like 10 days from closing, and the lender comes back. It's like, hey, Stephen, by the way, this seller has a home to sell that they have to sell until you can close. I'm like, nobody said anything about this. I'm sorry, my buyer had a home to sell. Nobody said anything about it. You never mentioned this to pre-approval, but you never mentioned this to the buyer, never mentioned this to me. For one, I didn't even know the dang buyers at the time had a home they needed to sell. And same company, so I, again, had multiple run-ins with them over the years, just where they've screwed stuff up, bad stuff, but they did the old bait and switch. And we always tell people, we encourage you to shop. You do not have to use our preferred lenders at all. We never require that. We never say, yes, you got to use these guys and only these guys. We tell people to shop. Talk to 3 different lenders, at least at 3 different companies. Approvals, rates, all this stuff varies. And preferably, companies that you've been referred to by friends or family, or something that that at least have a somewhat good reputation. Because what these people did was they kind of did the old bait and switch, showed the shiny, flashy lure, and the buyer bid it, and the buyer, as most buyers, right, biggest mistake people do is they don't shop lenders. Well, they never shopped. They never actually asked for a rate sheet. People, you got to see a rate sheet. So they never asked for this, never got any numbers. Well, literally 3 days before closing, remember the CD I was just talking about, the last one that got screwed up? Lender sends a CD. There's $3,000 on there more than what the buyer was expecting to see, what the lender told them verbally. That was going to be on there. Now, I've not seen that. I'm getting it from my agent, how we problem solve this and workarounds. But the buyer's obviously furious at the lender. Well, we told you so. We see this all the time. I feel like monthly almost. We're like, told you so. Told you so. You got a crappy rate. You got all this extra fees there. Should have shopped. Yeah, and this is kind of still hanging on. We've not solved this yet. Buyer actually wants to walk away from the deal. Now, the problem with this situation where the lender has got them is the buyer is under contract. Now, it is contingent on financing, but the financing is approved. Just because the buyer now has to pay more money, the buyer is eligible, the buyer has more money. So it would be different if the buyer did not have more money, but the buyer has it because the lender knows it, because they have access, basically have to see the bank accounts. So they know they have this money in there. So the buyer, the contingency doesn't give them a way out. So we've kind of, taken some actions on some things we're going to try to do to solve the problem. And again, it's not like we're basically 3 days away from closing. Well, now 2. So it's not really like we can switch lenders. There's no way to kind of get this closed in a decent period of time, unless, we go to the agent and we say, hey, agent, here's a situation, we need to switch lenders, and then that's probably another 2 to 3 week delay, which could piss the sellers off. They can ask for more money as well for the delay. So our buyer, like, they would legally breach a contract if they didn't close. And the lender done a good old bait and switch for $3,000 in extra fees that they never ever told the buyer about. So I'll obviously probably come back and do a video in a week or two once this gets finalized and how it got finalized and what happened. I'm hoping, because in my understanding, again, I'll talk to the lender. My understanding is the lender is aware of this. The lender acknowledged this. The lender blamed it on a processor. It seems like everybody blames their processors of hey, screw this up. Sorry, we left something out, or we didn't realize about these fees or whatever it is. So they're playing the blame game. And we're kind of hoping that they compensate. Maybe they take off a little bit. But I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. But gosh, this is just so important. Like, and I say all this, like, I want to talk about those two scenarios with a lender, but I will tell you, a real estate agent will cost you, a bad one will cost you way more. I have in certain deals, because of things that I knew, had different scenarios, I know for sure I have saved my clients or gotten them more back in concessions and credits and you name it, way more than what my commission ever was. Way, way more. And I'm not saying another agent could not have done that. But I have done that so many times, and worked out things, just because of, again, experience, making sure that we're always putting our clients first. But I can know where other agents, right, especially with, real estate being a sales game, right? The goal is, to get people to the closing table so you get paid. You don't get paid in real estate unless you get people to the closing table. Well, sure, we want to get people to the closing table. We want to get them to the closing table with them being happy. And ultimately for buyers, getting them the right home, trying to get them the best deal on that home. And for sellers, trying to get them the most money. But there's also hard conversations that's happened. I probably have buyers and sellers out there that think, oh my gosh, Stephen made me go $30,000 over and waive my inspection to get this home. What a crappy agent. Well, that was 2021. That was the only way we were getting a home. Yeah, by the way, you remember we missed 10 other homes doing that exact same thing. That was the market. Well, now, oh my gosh, I just had to take $30,000 less than my home. Stephen couldn't sell my home. Well, welcome to today's market. It is what it is. By the way, I told you what your home was worth on the top dollar. You wanted to go $25,000 more than that. Well, that was your decision. I said I'd support that. I'm gonna try my best. So there's all these scenarios. I'm not gonna sit here and toot my own horn. There's definitely clients that probably feel that I didn't give them the best service. I know. I wake up, look at myself every day in the mirror, and know for sure that I'm putting their interest above my interest, and I make sacrifices for my time to make sure that they're taken care of, and try my best to go above and beyond. I will tell my clients, this is a shitty deal, we need to walk away and try to get a new deal, way before I ever try to be like, and sometimes I tell them, it's not really a great deal for you, but I don't know if there's a better deal out there. And those scenarios happen. And sometimes I stick my foot in my mouth by being too honest. I've said that many times, but I'd rather err on sometimes being too honest, although it may come off kind of salesy, the being too honest part, but it is what it is. So wanted to make a video on that. It's something you should always, as a buyer or seller, shop your agents, talk to multiple agents. You're never going to hurt my feelings. We never bring contracts for people to sign up front. We're always happy to answer questions for you. No harm. I get messages and calls weekly from people, just random questions. I love doing this. You should educate yourself on it. And at no point do I be like, oh yeah, well, you're also looking to buy or sell. Let me know. I never do that crap. Nobody wants that. Everybody's tired of that. Nobody wants to be sold. People just want to be, have a great customer service, great customer experience whenever they buy or sell. And that's what we try to provide. And ultimately, that's why we always tell people to shop lenders. So you can also talk to them on the phone, go meet with them in person. We are a big fan of local lenders. I'm going to give you kind of a couple examples. And I say this very transparently, right? Banks. Small banks can be good. I am not a fan of big banks. Big banks to me suck. And I don't know if I get in trouble by naming a bunch of them. I know I've done it in some videos, but I don't have any bad recent experience with these big banks. But I'm talking the big banks. You know the names. Not a fan of them for the loan experience. I think their customer service is terrible. I think you're one of 1,000 files. They don't pay attention to you. Ultimately, too, they do not usually communicate with us. They say, we can't tell you anything. We can only tell the buyer. And they suck, and then they cause delays, and they don't pay attention. They care less about you. That person is usually getting paid on a salary and probably getting a small bonus in order to close you, so they're not super motivated. So that's my opinion on banks, right? Big banks don't really like. Small banks can be good. Credit unions, really like credit unions. Credit unions probably have some of the strictest cookie cutter rules on getting you approved for a home. So if you are a very well qualified buyer, I do like credit unions. They're very well respected, but they don't like weird stuff. If you make money weird, if you got a lower credit score, they don't like it. They may just say no. Don't worry about it. We're going to pivot to probably really what is overall my favorite, which is mortgage brokers. Mortgage brokers are like real estate agents. Don't really get paid unless you close a deal. They're highly motivated. They have a reputation, especially local ones there, and they want the relationship with the agents because we ultimately usually get to buyers and sellers first, and then usually they come to us before they come to the lenders, and then hopefully they'll take their advice and go to the lenders that the agent knows and trusts and does a good job. And then lastly there's the online lenders. I am not a fan of these people at all. I'm not going to say there's not good people there, and I've closed deals with Rocket Mortgage, I've closed deals with Loan Depot, I've closed deals with all these other random national companies. I've closed deals with them, but I've also had a ton of fall throughs. I've had a ton of fall throughs, bad experiences all the way around. So that's why I'm traditionally not a fan of them, because I do not trust them. I'm going to tell you what I do. If a buyer comes to me and they're approved usually by an online lender that is on my radar of being a phone call there, is I will make that buyer, I will recommend to my seller, we should make this buyer get pre-approved by a local respected lender. Who it is, I don't care. If they get approved by them and they still want to go back and use that lender, that's fine, no big deal, because we know they should qualify. But I do that for my sellers, because otherwise we're going to accept the contract, we're going to go pending for 10 days, nobody's going to come look at your home, and then 10 days later we're going to learn, oh, this is a fall through, sorry, they couldn't get financing, even though they had a pre-approval in hand, because these online lenders do not care about their reputation. They usually work with the worst appraisers that will kill your deal as well, because there is no relationship there. So just a lot of that. Wanted to share that with you guys. But as always, questions, holler anytime.